when I had an argument with my childhood sweetheart. He was so furious that he slapped me in front of everyone. That very day, I deleted all his contact information. No one could believe it. Calvin and I grew up together. I had liked him since we were kids, chasing after him for 9 whole years. Why? Helen? Just because of that one slap? He asked in confusion. Yes, just because of that slap, I answered with absolute seriousness. Chapter 1. When Calvin's slap landed on my face, I didn't even register what had just happened. With a dull smack, my body staggered back, my head buzzing from the blow. My left cheek first felt warm, then burned like it was on fire. I held my face, staring at him in a daze. My childhood sweetheart, Calvin, had just slapped me in front of everyone while I was in the middle of a dispute with a transfer student. Calvin seemed to realize what he had done. His expression froze for a second, but was quickly overtaken by anger and impatience. Can you stop causing drama? Helen, go back to your seat. There were some low chuckles from the class, but most people stayed silent, watching the drama unfold. Fernanda stood next to Calvin, twirling her pretty chestnut curls, and scad with feigned concern. Sigh. Calvin, what was that for? Can't you see your little princess is about to cry? Calvin's voice turned even colder when he heard that. Helen, if you want to cry, go home and cry. This is school, not a place for you to act out your princess syndrome whenever you feel like it. Humiliation, grievance, and rage churned inside me, and large tears spilled from my eyes. Amid the laughter of the boys, I suddenly bolted out of the classroom. I didn't know where I was going, but I didn't want to go to class anymore. I definitely didn't want to stay and face those people. Calvin had always lacked patience with me, but this was the first time he had ever slapped me. More than that, this was the first time anyone had ever slapped me in my entire life. Chapter 2. Calvin and I were childhood sweethearts. We met when we were just 3 years old. His parents and mine had been close friends for over a decade, and we lived in the same apartment building, right across the hall from each other. I had liked Calvin ever since I was little. Back in elementary school, I was often bullied by other boys. One boy in particular was awful. He'd sit behind me, pull my hair, stick chewing gum on my chair, and even put little firecrackers in my desk. I went to the teacher crying. The teacher scolded him, but then smiled and said he only did those things because he liked me. I didn't believe it. That boy never changed his behavior, so I went home and told my parents. They were furious and wanted to confront the teacher immediately. Uncle Wu happened to be visiting our house then. After hearing what happened, he called Calvin Wu over and told him to protect me at school from now on. Calvin and I were the same age, but we weren't in the same class back then. The very next day during recess, Calvin came to my classroom, dragged that boy out, and gave him a beating. He was tall even as a kid and had a tough personality. He beat that boy and his buddies until they were all crying loudly. Before leaving, he even warned the other boys, anyone who dares to bully Helen again, just wait and see. That was when I started liking him. From that moment on, I became his little sidekick. I stuck to him wherever he went. Calvin didn't like me tagging along. He had a bit of a macho attitude and thought hanging out with a soft, delicate girl like me made him look less manly. But I was persistent. I kept chasing after him, calling him Calvin bro all the time. A few years passed just like that. Slowly, he softened and stopped pushing me away. I started to notice that his gaze would linger on me longer when our eyes met. Sometimes he'd freeze. Sometimes he'd get flustered like he'd been shocked. His cheeks would flush and he'd fumble to change the subject. Uncle Wu once said, since the two kids got along so well, why not arrange a childhood engagement? Calvin didn't say anything, but he held my hand tightly. I saw that his ears had turned red. I felt sweet inside and declared loudly, okay, I want to marry Calvin bro. But everything started to change in high school. At the end of our first semester in 10th grade, a transfer student joined our class. Her name was Fernanda. People said she transferred because of her parents' job relocation. She had great grades and was strikingly beautiful. On her first day, she walked in with a head of chestnut curls and said cheerfully to the homeroom teacher, "Teacher, this is natural, my hair's just light-colored and naturally curly." Then she turned and scanned the whole class. When her eyes landed on me, she stopped, stared for a moment, then suddenly burst out laughing. Oh my god, I can't. Where did this Barbie princess come from? Ha 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 ha. Everything on you is pink, oh my god. You're in high school already and still trying to act cutesy? So embarrassing. Everyone in the class turned to look at me. My face instantly turned bright red. I loved pink, really loved it. Almost everything I owned was pink. A pink backpack, pink thermos, pink hair clips, pink t-shirts, pink sweaters, pink phone case. Even my keychains were pink. Because of that, people had talked about me before. In elementary school, boys called me gross and delicate. Some girls said I was pretending to be cute. But most people were nice. A lot of girls told me I was super adorable and that pink really suited me. This was the first time I'd ever been mocked so directly and blatantly in front of everyone. I was stunned and ashamed, wishing I could crawl into a hole and disappear. Ha 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 ha. Sorry. I just tend to speak my mind. Don't get mad, little princess, Fernanda said playfully, winking. All right. First day here. Maybe keep it down a notch. Calvin's impatient voice rang out just then. I turned around and saw him frowning at Fernanda, clearly annoyed. Fernanda raised an eyebrow and stared at him. Oh, the princess's loyal knight has arrived? What the hell are you talking about? Are you crazy? Calvin snapped and slammed the desk as he stood up. The teacher quickly scolded him and told him to sit down. Then she assigned Fernanda to the only empty seat in class. Coincidentally, or maybe not, it was the desk right in front of Calvin's. And just like that, they became front and back desk mates. Chapter 3. I didn't know when Calvin and Fernanda started getting close. It just happened one day, very suddenly. The strawberry milk Uncle Wu had asked Calvin to bring me every morning was replaced with plain milk. I hate plain milk the most. Didn't you know that? Staring at the box of plain milk in my hand, I was a little upset. Come on. You only like strawberry milk because the carton is pink. You're not a kid anymore. Drinking strawberry milk every day? From now on, drink plain milk. It's healthier. Calvin patted my head. Fernanda was also holding a box of plain milk. Hearing what he said, she turned and gave a shy, oops-style smile. Sorry, little pink. I like plain milk. So I asked Calvin to bring this instead. But strawberry milk is so sweet, it's honestly sickening. Do all girly girls like drinking stuff like that? I set the milk down, frowned, and stared straight at her. Do you just enjoy giving people nicknames? She stiffened, then looked surprised and helpless. Haha, why are you making such a big deal? I was just joking. You're way too sensitive, geez. Whether I'm sensitive or you're just being passive-aggressive, you know that better than anyone. All right, Helen, Calvin cut in, looking like he had a headache. Fernanda, yeah. Sometimes she says stuff without thinking. Don't take it to heart. I was furious. My eyes turned red with frustration. I shoved Calvin hard and still managed to snap at Fernanda. If you don't know how to speak like a decent person, then just shut up. Calvin was startled and quickly wrapped his arms around my waist, blurting out without thinking. All right. I was wrong, okay? Don't be mad. I'll bring you strawberry milk again tomorrow. All right? Upon seeing that, Fernanda's expression changed. She stared at me, eyes locked in a deadly glare. Chapter 4. Starting the next day, Fernanda began to target me. When I took out a pack of tissues with pink packaging, she exclaimed loudly, "Wow, even your tissues have to be pink? Are you trying to turn yourself into a Barbie doll?" During classroom cleaning, I wiped down the broom handle with a wet tissue. She exchanged exaggerated glances with the boys. Princess syndrome is acting up again. Every 2 weeks. When it was time to switch seats, I got tired while moving my desk and wanted to rest for a bit. Fernanda shouted across the classroom, "The princess can't lift her desk. Quick, can a few knights help the princess move her things?" At times like this, the boys who got along well with her would chime in like it was the funniest thing ever, laughing louder than the last. At first, Calvin felt it was inappropriate and would try to stop her. But Fernanda, all carefree and smiling, said, "It's just a joke." Helen always seems so stuck up. I'm helping her get along better with classmates. Hearing that, Calvin nodded thoughtfully. Helen does have a bit of princess syndrome. Are all girls like that these days? Fernanda punched his shoulder playfully. Hey, I'm not like that, okay? Don't lump me in with girls like her. Calvin chuckled. My heart felt bitter. I had always known Calvin thought I was delicate and a little temperamental. Maybe for most boys. Liking pink, being a bit of a clean freak, and having little strength, all of that just screams princess syndrome. Eventually, I couldn't hold it in anymore. That semester, I had gone to the beach with my parents during summer break, and my skin had gotten quite tanned. It had happened before. Usually after staying indoors for a couple of weeks, it would lighten again. I didn't think much of it. Shortly after school started, I wore a pink shirt under my uniform. When Fernanda saw it, she raised her voice dramatically. Oh my God, Helen, you're wearing pink with that dark skin? Don't you think that's ridiculous? I mean, ha 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 ha, I'm dying. What kind of princess are you supposed to be? What princess is this dark? You look more like a little black dog, ha 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 ha. She and a few boys burst into laughter. Calvin seemed to find it funny too. He even curled his lips into a smile. In that moment, overwhelming humiliation and helplessness surged through me. I felt the blood rush to my head, and my fists clenched tight. Amid their laughter, I grabbed my water cup and splashed it right in her face. Fernanda was stunned and started frantically wiping her wet face. Turns out, she was wearing makeup, and it had started to smear from the water. Cough cough, what the hell is wrong with you? Are you insane? Oh my God. I mimicked her tone. Coming to school with eyelid tape, foundation, and lipstick every day? No wonder you're not a princess. You're selling smiles, aren't you? Just a clown in costume? A few boys frowned and stepped in to stop me. Calvin was the first. Snatching the cup out of my hand. Helen, apologize. He looked down at me, towering over me with a frown and a cold tone. My eyes were already red as I glared at him. Didn't you hear what she said to me? She called me a dog. That's a separate matter. You already insulted her back. Now you need to apologize for splashing water on her. When you do something wrong, you have to admit it. Be obedient. Stop throwing a tantrum. He said it like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. Apologize. Fernanda won't hold it against you. I let out a cold laugh. Apologize your fucking mother. Calvin's eyes went wide, and he slapped me across the face. Chapter 5. I didn't attend the rest of the day's classes. I went straight home. Bursting into my room, I tore the place apart. My bookshelf, closet, and storage cabinet were left in complete chaos. I grabbed a big cardboard box and threw in everything Calvin had ever given me. From childhood till now, all in one go. I filled the entire box, double-checked to make sure I missed nothing. Then I carried the box downstairs and dumped everything into the trash. After that, my parents still weren't home. I called my mom. Hello, baby. What's wrong? Mom, when you come home later, go tell Uncle Wu and Auntie Wu that I've completely cut ties with Calvin. Anne, I said coldly. From today on, Calvin is not allowed to set foot in our house. Tell him to stay the hell away from me. When my mom came home, she looked at the slap mark on my face, shocked and furious. I told her everything that had been happening. She listened, her veins bulging in anger, then immediately turned and went to knock on Calvin's family's door. Auntie Wu seemed confused at first. My mom didn't waste a second. She laid out the entire story from beginning to end. How Calvin had slapped me with full force. How he stood by doing nothing while the transfer student bullied and mocked me. And how he finally stood in front of her to protect her. Auntie Wu's face turned pale, then dark. Our two families had been close for many years, but that day, because of me, a crack split through that bond. But my mom didn't blame me. Instead, she gently said, "We can't let anyone bully us. No matter what choice you make, your dad and I will always support you." The emotions I'd been bottling up burst all at once. My nose stung, and I threw myself into my mom's arms, crying hard. Chapter 6. That night, when Calvin came home, he must have seen the things I threw out in the trash. He came knocking, angry. "Helen, come out. We need to talk." I opened the door. Right away, I was met with Calvin's ice-cold face. "Why did you throw away all the stuff I gave you? What's it to you?" I stared at him coldly. The slap from that morning was still on my face. Calvin hadn't held back. The side of my face was swollen, his fingerprints clearly visible. The bruise wasn't fading, it was getting worse. Calvin's expression changed. He stared at the mark on my face, stunned. After a while, He mumbled. How did it get so bad? Then he reached out to touch me. I stepped back. Face blank. I rarely got hurt, usually. Even a little bump or bruise. I'd tear up and run to Calvin, asking him to comfort me. Truth was, I wasn't afraid of pain. I'm not very sensitive. Sometimes I wouldn't notice a scratch for days. I just wanted to act spoiled in front of the person I liked. Calvin, who always called me delicate and dramatic, actually enjoyed being needed. But not anymore. I wouldn't give him that privilege again. Calvin had never seen me so cold. He looked like he couldn't believe it. I didn't mean to. Helen, you said such harsh things. And I got angry in the moment. I cut him off. Since you're here, let's make it clear, from today on, we're strangers. From now on, use my full name. Don't talk to me if we see each other at school. And don't ever come knocking on my door again like tonight. I moved to shut the door. Calvin grabbed my wrist. Eyes locked on me, his expression shifting from guilt to anger and confusion. Is this really necessary? Helen, if you're angry because I hit you, I'll apologize. But don't you think you're being a little extreme? Did you even think about what you'll do if you regret this someday? I won't regret it. Why? He asked, holding back his temper. Just because I accidentally slapped you once? Yes, just because of that one slap, I said with absolute seriousness. Fine, if that's really what you want, then so be it. Calvin laughed from rage, slammed the door, and left. Chapter 7. The next day, Calvin and Fernanda made a big announcement in class. They were officially dating. I wasn't surprised. Looking back now, all the signs had been there. When Fernanda first transferred to our class, she quickly bonded with all the boys thanks to her outgoing, bold personality, but she barely interacted with the girls. In her own words, I only like hanging out with boys. It's easier. Boys don't talk behind your back. Girls are too scheming, always playing mind games. I can't deal with that. And those girls are so delicate. Say one wrong thing and they hold a grudge forever. I really can't get along with them. It's just more comfortable being with guys. Because of statements like that, none of the girls liked her. Fernanda, noticing this, would shrug at the boys and say helplessly, I know, I shouldn't have said they were so scheming. Now I've really pissed them off. Sigh. Guess the girl cliques are going to gang up on me again. Oh well, I'm used to it. And so, she put us in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. She refused to hang out with us, saying we were too delicate and dramatic. But when we actually ignored her, she turned around and accused us of isolating her and forming cliques. When I got home, I couldn't help but complain to my parents. Sweetheart, Mommy understands how you feel. I've met people like that before too. When you meet someone like her, don't let it affect you. Just don't get too close. Right then, Calvin happened to be visiting our house. His face turned cold. He was the type who rarely talked about others in private and looked down on what we were doing. Uncle, Auntie, Helen, isn't it kind of wrong to talk about someone behind their back like this? My parents and I were all embarrassed and fell silent. I later found out that, at some point, he and Fernanda had already formed a close friendship. Fernanda was good at English, and since she sat right in front of Calvin, she often volunteered to tutor him. His English was terrible. That used to be my job. Within 2 weeks of her arrival, she had taken over like it was the most natural thing. Fernanda also played basketball and got along well with the boys, many of whom were Calvin's closest buddies. So naturally, she became part of their circle. Calvin's impression of her also changed. From the transfer student who mocked someone on her first day, she became a cheerful, straightforward girl who just says things a bit bluntly. Calvin had always disliked being around clingy girls, but he accepted Fernanda quickly. In class, he and Fernanda passed notes, laughing openly without care. After school, she sat on the back of his bicycle, laughing brightly as they joked around with the other boys. I used to feel heartache and disappointment seeing that, but I comforted myself, thinking they were just friends. I thought Calvin liked me, but the truth was, I was just fooling myself. I'm in a proper relationship with Calvin, not like some people who hide behind the label of childhood sweethearts just to cling to someone and throw themselves at him for free, Fernanda said, smiling as she sat on Calvin's lap. Then she added meaningfully, also, even though I know girls love to go behind people's backs and snitch to the teacher. I really hope certain classmates don't go reporting us for dating. That'd be super low. Calvin said nothing. Some classmates offered congratulations. Others secretly glanced at me to see my reaction. Everyone in class knew I had grown up with Calvin. Everyone knew I liked him. I had only ever been close to Calvin. And before, he had only ever been close to me. My desk mate looked at me with concern. I didn't even lift my head. I just focused on reading my book. The atmosphere turned a bit awkward for a moment. Calvin let out a cold snort and looked away from me. After that, their relationship became even more inseparable. During breaks, Fernanda would take off her hair tie and slip it onto Calvin's wrist, playfully ordering him not to take it off. In class, they secretly passed notes under the desk. Sometimes, Calvin would even burst out laughing like no one else was around. They had lunch together. Fernanda would snatch chicken nuggets from Calvin's tray, and he'd let her, looking helpless but indulgent. After school, Fernanda sat on the back of his bicycle, arms tightly wrapped around his waist. They looked like a typical lovey-dovey couple. After 10 years of friendship, I couldn't help feeling a little uncomfortable at first, but I quickly got used to it. Just when I thought we'd never cross paths again, Calvin stopped me outside the school gates after class. Helen. His voice was low and serious. His expression complicated, somewhere between anger and joy. I couldn't read it. Fernanda took a sick day today. He looked at me as he spoke. I didn't react at first. What did that have to do with me? So what? Calvin cut straight to the point. What did you say to her? I blinked, then said flatly, what could I possibly say to her? I've never even spoken to her voluntarily. I wasn't a talkative person to begin with, especially not with someone like Fernanda. Even just looking at her annoyed me. If she didn't bother me, I could go a whole year without saying a word to her. What could I have said? Calvin's eyes were full of suspicion. He pressed further. She was totally fine when I dropped her off last night, but today, she calls in sick. When I called to ask what happened, she just cried and said she was sorry to you and begged you not to be mad anymore. So tell me the truth. What did you say to her? Did you hit her? You're insane. I didn't want to argue. I pushed past him, ready to leave. But suddenly, a strong force yanked me back. Calvin grabbed my wrist and stared at me like a predator locking onto its prey. Helen, I know you're upset we're dating, but this is too much. Have you forgotten? You're the one who said we should act like strangers. So now that you're jealous, you think you can just... He trailed off mid-sentence. Then after a moment, lowered his voice and said, if you just apologize, we can pretend none of this ever happened. We can go back to how we were. Calvin's tone was urgent, like he was desperate for my response. I couldn't take it anymore. I cut him off. You're seriously messed up. Let go. Apologize to you? I told you, I didn't do anything. You two can date however you want. I'm thrilled. You could pop out 10 kids right there, and it still wouldn't concern me. Now let go. Calvin's face turned stormy. He stared at me in disbelief, but his grip didn't loosen. Just as I was about to struggle free, a hand rested on Calvin's arm. Hey, that's not how you treat a girl, is it? I turned toward the voice. It was a boy in a school uniform, about our age. Jack? I said instinctively. Jack was a senior at our school. He and I had once been on the school team for the provincial math competition. We hadn't interacted much back then, so we weren't exactly close. The only reason I remembered him was because his face was impossible to forget. What was he doing here? Seeing my confused expression, Jack turned to me and gave a mischievous wink. Then he tightened his grip. Calvin's face began to darken. I took the chance to break free and ran off without looking back. Chapter 8. On Wednesday, during PE class, I wasn't feeling very well, but I didn't pay much attention. I followed the teacher's instructions and joined the others in running laps. Boys and girls ran separately. Girls ran first while the boys waited on the sidelines. As I ran, everything suddenly went dark. My limbs turned numb and weak. That's when I realized I was having a hypoglycemic episode. But it was too late. My foot slipped, and I stumbled to my knees on the track in a very awkward fall. There were gasps all around. Very quickly, someone rushed toward me. A strong arm wrapped around mine and pulled me up. It was Calvin. Are you having low blood sugar again? Did you skip another meal? You're running in this condition? Can you take some responsibility for your body? Does it hurt? I'm taking you to the infirmary. He hovered by my ear, nagging. I was already irritated from falling, and the way everyone was looking at me made it worse. I struggled to pull my arm away. Don't touch me. I can walk by myself, he growled. Is this really the time to throw a tantrum? Can you just care about your health for once? I'm just walking you to the infirmary, then I'll leave. Happy now? I let out a bitter laugh. You don't get it. Is low blood sugar some kind of terminal illness? I just need to sit for a while. Am I dying? Do you absolutely have to take me to the infirmary? Calvin clenched his jaw. After a moment, he hissed through his teeth. Do you have to be so ungrateful? I looked at him calmly. If that's what you think, then there's nothing I can do. Calvin let go of me roughly and walked off without looking back. There weren't many people in the infirmary. Only one student sat on a bed. It was Jack. When he saw me, his eyes lit up and he grinned. Hey, Helen! What a coincidence, you're here too. I gave him a half-hearted nod. Then I noticed Jack was injured, much more seriously than me. His knee was wrapped in a thick layer of gauze, and blood had soaked through. What was white was now red. Seeing my gaze, he looked down and scratched his head, a little embarrassed. Oh, this. Yeah, there's a loose patch on the court I didn't see while playing ball. Took a fall. It's nothing major, just a flesh wound. What about you? Are you okay? I vaguely remembered hearing that Jack was the captain of the school basketball team. He was apparently quite well known. That bloody gauze made me wince. I couldn't help but soften a little toward him. I'm fine, just low blood sugar. You should rest. Jack nodded eagerly, his smile bright and warm. You'd never guess he was seriously injured. Over the next few days, because of my low blood sugar and my period, and Jack's injured knee, we kept running into each other at the infirmary during the morning jog period. Eventually, we got pretty familiar with each other. Jack had that kind of naturally friendly personality, outgoing, gentle, and emotionally considerate. Being around him was easy and relaxing. One day, Jack sat on the infirmary bed, looking a bit sheepish. Helen, I think our friendship could maybe develop a little further. What do you think? I was startled and quickly waved my hands to refuse. But he didn't give up. A week later, when neither of us needed the infirmary anymore, he started coming to find me during the morning break every day. Sometimes with candy, sometimes with my favorite milk. He'd come and plop down in the seat next to me and just wouldn't leave, talking nonstop. And the girls around me were all too eager to offer him a seat every time. Gradually, the rumor spread like wildfire. A senior named Jack was dating a sophomore girl, me. I denied it, but everyone just gave me that I get it look. Like, sure. Say what you want. We all know the truth. A girl sitting behind me leaned in, gossip written all over her face. Hey, Helen, let me ask you, does Jack really have an 8-pack? I was confused. How would I know that? But I still answered honestly. I don't know. Oh, come on. Don't hide stuff from your girls. We're just curious. He never lifts his shirt to wipe sweat during games. No girl's seen his body. He's got full marks in male decency. You know that? My desk mate poked me too. Upperclassman on his team said he's got an 8-pack. You're his only girlfriend. Helen, you must have seen it, right? Come on. Spill. Is it nice? What does it feel like to touch it? Chapter 9. I thought back for a moment. He never lifted his shirt. That didn't seem right. I vaguely remembered that when we were in the infirmary, he was always saying he was hot, complaining there was no AC, and would casually pull up his shirt to wipe his sweat. Thinking carefully, I had seen it. I fell into thought and murmured instinctively, I think so, but he's pretty lean. I've never touched it though. Ah! Girl, are you kidding me? You lucky thing. Before I could finish, the girl behind me shrieked in excitement. Hey, shut up. I only saw it a couple of times. I didn't do anything, okay? It's got nothing to do with me. I quickly covered her mouth. Right then, a sharp clang echoed through the classroom. We all turned. Calvin had dropped and shattered his glass. His face had gone pale, and it took him a long moment to react. Slowly, he bent down to pick up the broken shards. As he gathered them, Fernanda cried out, Calvin, your hand! I only then noticed that his fingers had been cut. Bright red blood was dripping down from them. He stared blankly at his hand, lost in thought. "Calvin, I have tissues, come here. Let me help you wrap it up." Fernanda reached for his hand, but Calvin shook her off. In front of everyone, he walked toward me instead. The cut was deep, but it was like he didn't even feel the pain. Blood dripped steadily to the ground as he walked up to me. He looked at me and said quietly, I'm hurt. Helen, could you give me a Band-Aid?" I stared at him. I always carried Band-Aids. Calvin knew that. Because of him. Chapter 10. When we were younger, Calvin always got into fights for me. In elementary school, boys would pull my braids, lift my skirt, or stuff creepy things into my backpack or desk. By middle school, a boy who confessed to me was rejected. Out of spite, he and his buddies started spreading rumors that I was messing around with guys, that I took gifts and strung them along. Calvin beat them one by one until no one dared talk about me behind my back. Once, that same guy gathered some of his friends and followed Calvin after school. They shoved him from behind down the hallway. Back then, our school had floor-to-ceiling windows. Calvin had no idea and was pushed right through one, glass shattered everywhere. He rolled to the ground, covered in shards. Thankfully, it was only the first floor, so he wasn't seriously hurt. But both his arms were slashed by the broken glass, covered in deep, jagged cuts. When I found him, his uniform was soaked in blood. His face was contorted in pain, but he still gritted his teeth and told me, "I'm fine. It doesn't hurt." I cried so hard my vision blurred, but all I could do was stare helplessly at the blood flowing from his wounds. From that day on, I always carried Band-Aids. Even after that, no matter who tried to bully me, I handled it myself. I never told Calvin again. I was too afraid he'd get hurt because of me. But the habit stayed. Calvin used to tease me for overreacting, but when I saw the smile behind his eyes, I knew he actually liked it. Then, when Fernanda transferred in, she once saw the Band-Aids fall out of my bag and told Calvin, "You still use Hello Kitty Band-Aids at your age? So childish. Even when you're hurt, you're trying to act cute." Calvin had smiled and nodded. I pulled myself out of the memory and looked at Calvin. I gently shook my head. "I'm not giving you a Band-Aid," I said. "Not anymore. Ever again." Calvin didn't seem surprised. The color drained from his face. He gave a soft, self-deprecating laugh. I figured. His eyes dimmed all at once, like a falling star. Chapter 11. After school, Fernanda cornered me at the back door of the classroom. "Let's talk." She wasn't smiling this time. Her expression was serious. I was honestly getting a little annoyed. Why do they keep coming to me one after another? Am I just a part of their little emotional play? They're having their romance. I'm just going to school. We clearly have no overlap. So why is one blocking me today, and another wanting to talk tomorrow? Fernanda stared at me gloomily. After a moment, she said, "I really don't understand. What is it about you that makes him so obsessed?" I almost laughed out loud. "Don't beat around the bush. If you've got something to say, just say it." Her face twisted for a second. She glared at me with hatred. "You must feel pretty smug, right? Calvin may be with me now, but in his heart, he still likes you. Seeing you date another guy is practically sending him into depression. He's been ignoring me these past few days. I really don't get it. What's so great about your dramatic little princess syndrome? He only got emotional and accidentally slapped you once, and you cut ties with him completely. Isn't it just because he made you lose face? Just because your vain pride was hurt? You could throw away a childhood sweetheart you grew up with. People like you are the definition of selfish and petty." Fernanda rattled it all off in one breath, as if she were really feeling wronged on his behalf. I listened quietly, then said, "There's no need to test me. I won't get back together with him." She froze. I smiled. Getting sent by your boyfriend to test how his childhood friend feels must be pretty humiliating, right? But you don't need to worry. I'll treat him like a stranger from now on. For life. When I say I won't pick up the trash I threw out, I mean it. Go back and tell Calvin the same thing I've always said. Get lost. The farther, the better. Fernanda's face turned incredibly complex. There was guilt from being seen through, humiliation, and confusion. As I walked away, her voice came from behind, tinged with unwillingness. Helen, all just because of a slap? Just because he hit you that once? Yes, just because of that slap. I replied once more, still the same answer. Chapter 12. That night, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. Without thinking too much, I answered. Helen, it was Calvin. He must have gotten a new SIM card. Are you done yet? I said, and immediately wanted to hang up. Wait, listen to me, Calvin said. I stayed silent. I read that diary. After a moment, a hoarse voice came through the phone. My mind went blank for a second before it clicked. Calvin was talking about that diary of mine. I had only one diary, a gift from Calvin when I was 10. I treasured it like gold and developed the habit of journaling ever since, writing in it for many years. That diary carried my feelings for him over all those years. I recorded every little moment I spent with Calvin in meticulous detail. I loved everything about him. I even used to imagine, when we got married someday, I'd give him that diary. It would be my long confession. Didn't I throw it away? I murmured. I picked it up that day. Calvin's voice trembled. I'm sorry, Helen. I read your diary. I didn't know you liked me that much. I'm sorry for ignoring how you felt. I actually regretted it the day I hit you. All these years, I didn't see you as just a sister. Calvin. I cut him off. When did you pick it up? There was a sudden pause on the other end. It's been many days, hasn't it? I smiled. Then why are you only calling me about it now? Is it because you only just opened it today? His voice was feeble and weak. It's because I started dating someone recently. You felt threatened. You felt your position was really in danger. That's why, after all these months, you suddenly had a whim to lower yourself and finally open that dusty old diary. Isn't it? Helen. That's not it. I didn't listen to his explanation. My voice stayed calm. Calvin, you should know, late apologies and confessions don't fix the past. They only make the few memories left feel even more misplaced. That diary doesn't matter anymore. You should just throw it away. Don't call me again. Don't try to find me. It's honestly exhausting. I hung up the phone. Chapter 13. My birthday was a week away, and my parents decided to throw a birthday party. They asked me to invite my classmates. Originally, I didn't want to invite Calvin and his group, but since they'd been behaving themselves lately, I figured there was no need to stir up trouble, so I handed out invitations equally. Jack shamelessly asked me for one too. On the day of the party, I showed up in full glam. Calvin came too, wearing a suit, with Fernanda on his arm, her makeup impeccable. As soon as she saw me, she clung tightly to Calvin's arm, pressing herself so close to him there was practically no space between them. Calvin's face was expressionless. I didn't greet them. I walked straight toward the adults. The party was joyful, but also a little tiring. Midway through, I went out to the balcony alone to rest and enjoy the night breeze. That's when I heard footsteps behind me, though I didn't want to admit it. We had known each other for so many years, I recognized his footsteps instantly. He stood behind me, his voice hoarse. Can we talk, Helen? I turned and saw Calvin's eyes, red and swollen. Sure, I said flatly, but if possible, I hope this will be the last time. His face turned pale, and he gave a bitter laugh. Does it really have to be like this between us, Helen? So now, no matter how much I beg you, you won't forgive me? I looked away. I really don't get it. Haven't you always liked me? And you knew. I liked you too. We were just one step away from confessing. Why did you treat me like that? He had finally said it, for the first time. He admitted that he liked me too, but in a moment like this, just because of that slap? Just like when he first asked that question, I nodded without hesitation. Yes, because of that slap. That day, I heard everything. Calvin hadn't just hit me in a moment of emotional loss of control. That day, I heard it all. A few days before that incident, I once again saw Calvin giving Fernanda a ride home. Feeling uneasy, I followed them. Calvin and a few of his buddies took Fernanda into a hot pot restaurant. While eating, they were chatting casually. She's been following you since elementary school. Damn, isn't she your childhood sweetheart? So she still likes you, huh? Definitely. She only talks to Calvin in class. been chasing you for 9 years, and Calvin still won't agree? Don't like her? My heart tightened. Calvin let out a short laugh and said casually, I like her. Sure, but I don't really want to be in a relationship. She's too clingy, feels like a hassle. Everyone burst out laughing. Damn, you're savage. Man, aren't you afraid she won't like you anymore if you keep stringing her along like this? No way. Girls like her, once they fall, they cling. You couldn't shake them off even if you tried. At that moment, Fernanda's voice rang out with a hint of laughter. Yeah, I know that kind of girl all too well. Loves pink, everything she buys has to be pink. Super delicate. Always acting fragile. Always relying on others. No matter how Calvin treats her, as long as he's a little bit nice, she'll keep liking him. You see? Even though I'm this close to Calvin now, she still tries to worm her way in with those big, eager eyes. I bet, even if you slapped her in public, all you'd have to do is apologize and she'd be fine with it. For real? That dumb? Damn, Calvin. Impressive. Wanna give it a try? Slap her once and she'd probably burst into tears on the spot. I held my breath. In the noisy hot pot restaurant, Calvin's voice stood out with painful clarity. Sure. Why not? Let's try it. Now. Calvin stood before me in complete panic, his hands trembling slightly. No, Helen, listen to me. I just said that to save face. I didn't really mean it. Don't deny it. That's just pathetic. Calvin. I looked at him and said softly, weren't you always the one who said it's awful to talk behind people's backs? Look at yourself. How are you any better? All the color drained from Calvin's face in an instant. I let out a long sigh. Strangely, though I was furious and heartbroken back then, now I felt nothing. It was like watching someone else's story unfold. I know you like me, but I also know that you hesitated. Didn't you? There was a moment when you thought Fernando was great too. You liked her, so much that you wanted to show off in front of her. That's normal. Calvin, you like me because we grew up together. Because I'm pretty and I loved you wholeheartedly. So yes, you had feelings, but at the end of the day, we're not right for each other. You think I'm pretty, but it doesn't stop you from seeing me as a fragile little princess type, princess syndrome. You think my love for pink makes me immature, not as strong, not as capable as you big, bold guys. That's why in the end, girls like Fernanda will always appeal to you more. And if it wasn't Fernanda, it would have been someone else. The next girl, loud, unfiltered, different from others, but just as pretty. But Calvin, you shouldn't have stepped on me just to elevate yourself. I gave a cold laugh. How dare you hit me? Do you not realize no one has ever hit me before? Who do you think you are? Calvin? Tell me, what gave you the right to hit me? Calvin's face was hollow, utterly defeated, because I had spoken aloud the darkest, most shameful, most selfish part of him, and he knew it. He had no defense left. I looked at him steadily. In the end, he stood there in a daze, a single tear sliding down his cheek. Helen, do you not love me anymore? I never loved you. I said it without hesitation. What? Calvin's lips were pale as he stared at me in confusion. I met his gaze and spoke clearly. I used to like you. I liked you for a long time, since elementary school. My feelings didn't need your actions to exist. They just kept growing, because that love lived inside the beautiful fantasy I had of you. It didn't need your response. As long as I had it, it was real to me. But not long ago, I let it go. Why? He asked like someone in a dream. Because even now, when I see your face, my own still aches faintly. I said it without emotion. And with that, all remaining color drained from Calvin's face. Chapter 14. Later, Calvin and Fernanda broke up. I didn't know the reason. Not long after, Fernanda applied to transfer to another class. As for Calvin, he seemed like a completely different person. He cut off contact with all his old buddies and followed me around like he had nothing else in the world. Every morning, he brought me the breakfast I liked. At lunch, he'd fight to get me the most popular dishes. After school, he would follow me cautiously, saying he wanted to protect me on the way home. It was like we were back in elementary school. No, he treated me even better than back then. When I asked what he was trying to do, he just shook his head and looked at me with those sad, silent eyes. Eventually, he said he just wanted to make it up to me, to take good care of me. To be honest, I couldn't shake him. No one could reason with him. It was exhausting. Just around that time, my parents were assigned a relocation plan through their company, coincidentally, to my mom's hometown, Seaside City. We decided that before senior year, I'd transfer schools, and the whole family would move to Seaside City. I didn't tell anyone in advance. One weekend, I simply messaged a few close classmates to say goodbye. Calvin was the last to find out. I didn't know how he did it, but on the day we left, he chased after our car for a very, very long time. I sat in the passenger seat, quietly watching the rearview mirror. I saw him running with everything he had, stretching out his hand like he was shouting something. I saw his heart-wrenching tears, his pale face. Don't go. Please, don't go. I haven't even, Helen. But the wind was too strong. It blew away his final words. Eventually, the figure who had accompanied me for decades stumbled, stood up again, trembling, growing smaller, smaller and smaller, until he became just a faint black dot. And then, he disappeared. Later, I occasionally heard things about Calvin from old classmates. Some said he never recovered, that he was stuck in a slump every day. Others said he gave up on himself and cycled through countless girlfriends. Still others said he had changed completely, now buried in books, seemingly with a clear goal of what university he wanted to attend. I didn't follow up. After the college entrance exams, I was admitted to a university in a coastal city. With a heart full of hope, I ran toward my future. As fate would have it, Jack ended up at the same university as me. When he saw me, he began courting me enthusiastically. In the first 2 years of college, every birthday, I would receive an anonymous package. Sometimes it was a handmade doll I had once casually mentioned on WeChat. Sometimes it was a dress I had longed for but never bought. I accepted all of them, but never used them. They piled up in the corner of my dorm. Until junior year, I accepted Jack's pursuit. At my boyfriend's strong urging, I made our relationship public on WeChat. The gifts, which had arrived without fail every year, stopped. And that was just fine. They should have stopped long ago. This is where it ends. Story 2. On the day of the typhoon, my husband Eric's first love, Julia, invited me to go out to sea. On the way back, we encountered a violent storm. Our boat capsized, and both Julia and I were rescued and taken to the hospital. My husband Eric works as a doctor at the city hospital, and that day, it just so happened that he was on duty for emergency cases. Julia only suffered minor scratches, yet my husband rushed to her side without hesitation. He didn't spare a glance at me, lying right beside him, barely clinging to life. Chapter 1. When Julia and I were brought to the hospital, the first person I saw was my husband, Eric. Eric glanced at me and said, "Why did you take Julia deep-sea fishing? And during a typhoon? Do you even realize how dangerous that was?" What? I froze, completely caught off guard. It was Julia who invited me, even saying that Eric would be on the boat too, which was the only reason I went. But when we were heading back, we encountered the typhoon, and our boat capsized. I wanted to explain, but a sharp pain suddenly overwhelmed me, making it impossible to speak. Eric took one look at me and sneered coldly. "Stop pretending. Julia already told me on the way to the hospital that it was you who invited her, telling her to stay away from me." He stared at me with a look of disdain. I was gasping for breath, unable to speak. I wanted to reach out to Eric, to tell him that I was dying, to beg him to save me. But just as I managed to touch Eric's hand, he forcefully yanked it away. His attention had already shifted. Behind me, Julia was being helped off the ambulance by a nurse. Julia's face was streaked with tears, looking fragile and pitiful. The moment Eric saw her, it was as if his soul had left his body. He rushed toward her with quick steps. "Julia, are you okay?" He gripped Julia's hand tightly, his voice filled with concern. I felt my own hand drop weakly, as the stabbing pain in my chest worsened. I wanted to call out, but no sound would come out. Beside me, a nurse noticed something was wrong and quickly called out to Eric. "Doctor, Zoe's condition is deteriorating. You need to come over." She's faking it. Eric's cold, heartless words echoed behind me. Those words made the pain in my heart even more unbearable. Without any care for me, Eric led Julia upstairs, personally attending to her injuries. But Julia only had minor scrapes. Nothing serious. The nurse, seeing that Eric was ignoring me, called for other doctors in a panic. After examining my condition, the doctors were at a loss. "Where's Eric? He's the only one who can save Zoe," one of the doctors said urgently. My husband was the best cardiologist at the city hospital. With the other doctors on leave, he was the only one who could save me. The nurse, with her head bowed, called Eric again. "I just saw her. What could possibly be wrong? Stop calling and bothering me," Eric snapped, hanging up abruptly, left with no other choice. The nurse called another doctor who was on vacation, but by the time that doctor arrived, it was too late. I watched from above, my soul floating in the air as they wheeled my lifeless body into the operating room, only to quickly wheel it back out. There was no need for surgery. I was already dead. Chapter 2. Eric and I grew up together. We were childhood sweethearts. My mom and Eric's mom were best friends, and our families were very close. When we were young, Eric's mother often traveled for business since her company was large, so she would leave Eric at our house to be taken care of. As a result, Eric and I were always together, and we became very close. He lived with us for 3 years, and during that time, my mom and his mom would always joke about how we should end up together when we grew up. At first, Eric would smile and say he'd marry me when we got older, but that all changed when he went to college, where he met Julia. That summer, Eric came back home from university, and our families gathered for dinner. Eric's mother, as usual, mentioned that when he graduated, he should marry me. But this time, Eric's expression darkened. "Mom, Zoe and I are not suited for each other. I already have someone I like." He stood up and said it loudly. The moment those words left his mouth, silence fell over the room. His mother's face turned red with anger. The dinner naturally ended in discomfort and silence. After that, Eric and I didn't see each other again for the rest of that summer. It wasn't until later that Eric called me, furiously accusing me. "Zoe, was this your doing? What did you tell my mom? Why did she cut off my credit card?" He questioned me angrily, as if I had done something wrong, but I had no idea what he was talking about. I didn't know why his mother had cut off his card, and no matter how much I tried to explain, he wouldn't listen. He hung up on me without letting me say another word. Feeling unsettled, I decided to call his mom and ask. She told me that while Eric was in college, he had been spending over $1,000,000 from the family every month. She had discovered that the girlfriend Eric was seeing at the time wasn't a good person and wanted him to break up with her. But Eric refused to listen. That's why she cut off his card. "Zoe, this has nothing to do with you. Eric may not appreciate you, but I do." She comforted me softly. In the year after his financial support was cut off, Eric struggled. He even borrowed money from several of his classmates. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't provide Julia with the luxurious lifestyle she was used to. When Julia realized she could no longer rely on Eric for money, she accepted an offer from Eric's mother, taking 50,000 yuan in exchange for leaving him. But what I never expected was that Eric would blame me for everything that happened. The day Eric broke up with Julia, he came straight to my house. Drunk and stumbling, he pinned me against the wall and kissed me forcefully. "Zoe, my mom wants me to marry you. Will you marry me?" he asked, his gaze piercing into mine. I stared at his face, the face I had loved since childhood. Despite all the harshness and coldness he'd shown me over the years, I couldn't deny my feelings for him. Of course, I agreed. That night, we ended up in bed together. It felt like a natural progression. But what I hadn't expected was his reaction the next morning. When he woke up and realized it was me beside him, his expression darkened. He didn't say a word, he simply pushed me out of the house. Later, under pressure from his domineering mother, Eric eventually married me. But I knew he never truly forgot about Julia. After the wedding, Eric treated me with distant coldness. He often stayed at the hospital and rarely came home. I tried reaching out to him a few times, but every time I did, he would dismiss me, sending me back with nothing but cold indifference. I knew he couldn't let go of Julia. Eric's mother, after realizing the situation, scolded him several times. Each time, Eric would grow angrier with me, convinced that I was complaining to his mother behind his back. His dissatisfaction with me only deepened. One day, while scrolling through my social media feed, I stumbled upon a post from Eric. In the photo, he was smiling brightly, standing next to Julia. They were holding hands, both of them looking blissfully happy. The comments underneath were filled with compliments, saying how perfect they looked together. After our wedding, Eric hadn't told many of his friends that he was married, so most of them still thought he was single. I even saw one of his friends asking about their wedding date, and to my surprise, Eric replied, "Soon." Seeing all of this, I knew the end of our marriage was near, so when Julia invited me out, saying that Eric would be there too, I agreed to go. In my mind, I assumed they were ready to confront me, to talk about the inevitable divorce. I had already resigned myself to ending things with Eric, but I never expected that it would be my final trip. Chapter 3. My soul hovered above Eric's head as he gently spoon-fed Julia some porridge. His movements were tender, carefully attending to her every need. It had been so long since I'd seen this side of Eric, the soft and caring man I used to know. When we were younger and I fell ill, Eric had taken care of me in the exact same way. Back then, he promised me, "Zoe, don't worry, I'll take care of you for the rest of your life. Whenever you're sick, I'll always be there." It was from that moment on that Eric became everything to me. His words still echoed in my ears, but the person receiving his care had long since changed. What I never expected was that not only would Eric break his promise, but he would also become the person who hurt me the most. Suddenly, Eric's phone rang, and he answered quickly. "Dr. Eric, MS. Zoe has passed away." The voice on the other end belonged to the same nurse who had called him earlier. Eric frowned and snorted coldly. "How much did Zoe pay you?" "I know exactly what kind of person she is. She's always playing the victim to get sympathy. You think you'll gain anything by helping her? How could you even lie like that?" Without waiting for a response, Eric hung up the phone immediately. Moments later, the phone rang again. "Doctor, I'm serious. Her body is still here in the hospital. Her parents passed away a long time ago. And you're her husband." About her body. Before the nurse could finish, Eric interrupted her harshly. "If you keep talking nonsense, you'll regret it. Don't think I don't know Zoe's tricks. She thinks that by pretending to be sick or even dead, I'll go to see her. Tell her it's not happening. And if you call me again, I'll deal with you too." His voice was loud, filled with rage. The nurse on the other end, now terrified, didn't dare call again. Julia, sitting next to him, spoke softly. "Was that Zoe calling you? She might need something. You should go to her," Julia said, her voice feigning innocence as she pretended to cough a few times. "It's all my fault. Zoe said she'd pay me to leave you, but I couldn't do it. I didn't want to give you up." Julia's eyes filled with fake tears. "I never imagined Zoe would get violent and hit me. I lost control, and the boat overturned." She started crying, putting on an act. "Zoe even threatened me, saying that if I didn't leave you, she'd have someone hurt me." "Eric, I'm scared. We should just break up," Julia said, her voice trembling with false fear. Hearing Julia twist the truth so blatantly, Eric's expression grew darker. He responded coldly, "Don't worry, as long as I'm here, nothing will happen to you." Chapter 4. For 2 days, Eric had remained in Julia's hospital room without leaving. While my body had been lying in the hospital morgue all that time, my soul was trapped near Eric, watching as he doted on Julia every day, showering her with care and attention. Julia, in turn, spent those days feeding him countless lies about me. In her version of the story, I was a vicious, controlling, and deranged woman who had done nothing but harm her. I listened to these fabricated stories, surprised at how evil Julia made me out to be. I never realized, until now, how terrible I supposedly was. But none of it was true. These were things I never did. Then, one day, the door to Julia's hospital room suddenly burst open. Eric's mother stormed in, her face streaked with tears. The moment she saw Eric tenderly feeding Julia fruit, Her face darkened with fury. Without hesitation, she marched over and slapped Eric hard across the face. "Eric, your wife is dead, and here you are taking care of this mistress?" My mother-in-law was livid. When the hospital had informed Eric of my death, he dismissed it, believing it was some sort of trick. He even treated the nurses with contempt, refusing to listen to anything they said. His dismissive and rough behavior had become the gossip of the entire department. Now, everyone in the hospital thought Eric had lost his mind. After all, who jokes about death? The entire hospital knew that Eric was neglecting his wife's death for the sake of his mistress. During the time Eric had spent caring for Julia in her room, his reputation had plummeted. Since Eric refused to take responsibility for my body, the hospital had no choice but to call my mother-in-law. She flew back from overseas the same day. By the time she arrived, the nurses, who had long been fed up with Eric's behavior, told her everything. They explained that my death could have been avoided if Eric had just cared enough to help. I would still be alive, but he didn't, and that negligence had cost me my life. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law almost fainted from shock. Holding back her grief, she rushed to Julia's room, where she saw Eric, and without hesitation, slapped him. The force of the slap left Eric stunned. "Mom, even you are in on Zoe's lies?" He glared at her, his voice filled with rage. "What's so special about her? That woman disgusts me. I was planning to divorce her." "You don't need to divorce her. Zoe is already dead." His mother's voice cracked as she screamed the words at him. "Impossible. I don't believe it," Eric shouted angrily. "You must all be in on this to trick me." Yesterday, Julia even received a message from Zoe, saying she would still take revenge on her. Eric pointed at Julia as he spoke. Yesterday, Julia had opened her phone and played a voice message threatening her to leave Eric. The voice was about 70% similar to mine. Julia acted scared, while Eric was incredibly gentle with her. But to me, it was absolutely disgusting. "You really believe everything this woman says?" Eric's mother stared at him in disbelief. Was this really the son she had raised all these years? "Come with me. I'll show you Zoe's body with your own eyes. You heartless brute." Eric's mother glared at him, furious. She practically had to drag Eric away by force. But Eric didn't care at all. He even shoved his mother aside roughly. "Mom, I know you're working with Zoe to deceive me. You just want me to go see her." Eric's voice was filled with anger as he shouted. "I'm not going to see Zoe." His mother's face turned pale. She looked at her son and found herself at a loss for words. She never expected her son to reach a point where he couldn't tell right from wrong. She stepped forward and slapped Eric hard across the face. "You're a monster. I never should have let Zoe marry you." With those words, she shoved Eric aside and stormed off. Chapter 5. Julia leaned into Eric's arms and whispered, "Eric, I'm so scared. Yesterday, Zoe threatened me, and now your mom is threatening me too." Her voice trembled, but from where I hovered in the air, I could clearly see the smirk at the corner of her mouth. "Don't worry. Nothing's going to happen to you," Eric reassured her. Soon, Eric's mother returned, this time throwing a death certificate down in front of him. "Eric, take a good look," she demanded. Her eyes were filled with disappointment as she stared at her son. She had never imagined he would turn into this kind of person. Eric picked up the death certificate and examined it closely. Since he worked at the hospital, he could easily tell whether it was genuine. But just as he was about to verify it, Julia let out a sudden scream. "Eric, my stomach hurts." Her face was pale as she clung to Eric, her voice trembling with desperation. "Am I dying?" "Don't worry. You're fine." In a panic, Eric tossed aside the death certificate and rushed to comfort her, shoving his mother out of the room in the process. His mother stood outside the door, her face turning pale with rage, and she began to cry uncontrollably. I watched her sob, her heartbreak evident, and I wished I could comfort her, to tell her not to shed tears over me or Eric anymore. After crying her heart out, she composed herself and made arrangements at the hospital, retrieving my body and transferring it to the funeral home. She also notified relatives and friends about my memorial service. Later, she sent Eric a video, footage of my body being taken to the funeral home. When Eric opened the video and saw the scene, he froze, unable to process the reality. He hadn't believed it before. But now, panic set in as he quickly got up and rushed out. Eric. I'm in so much pain. Eric. Julia's voice called after him. But this time Eric didn't hear her. He hurried to the funeral home, where he was met by his mother's cold expression. Mom. How could Zoe be dead? He stammered, his voice trembling. In that moment, he finally believed it. I was truly gone. His mother remained silent, turning to let Eric enter the memorial hall. When he saw my lifeless body, he stood there, stunned. He reached out, wanting to touch my face, but his mother quickly slapped his hand away. Don't touch her. You don't deserve to. Eric's mother raised her voice, looking straight at him. I just want to tell you, Zoe is really dead. And it was you, you heartless beast. Who killed her? You don't deserve to be her husband. How did I ever give birth to such a disgrace? Her emotions were running high, and she lashed out at Eric with fury. She knew, deep down, that Eric was beyond saving. Throw him out. He doesn't deserve to attend Zoe's funeral. Eric's mother glared at him, her words laced with venom. Upon hearing this, Eric panicked. Mom, I'm Zoe's husband. I have to attend. Eric shouted desperately. His plea was met with the cold, unforgiving stare of his mother, and a group of security guards who forcibly threw him out. He stood at the entrance of the hall, trying to get back in, but the guards harshly restrained him. Chapter 6. The funeral went smoothly, with all the friends and relatives in attendance. I had always been kind to others, so everyone was deeply saddened by my sudden death. Eric's mother didn't spare him any dignity and openly revealed all his wrongdoings. Everyone was shocked. No one had ever imagined that the seemingly refined and gentle Eric could be such a person. They cursed him loudly, standing at the entrance to the funeral hall, blocked by a group of security guards. Eric's face was grim, but he had no way to defend himself. When the mourners left the hall, they looked at Eric with disgust. He stood there alone, appearing isolated, but no one pitied him. Everything that had happened was his own doing. After the burial, Eric's mother approached him. I have something to show you, she said, playing a video for Eric. The footage was from Eric's yacht, the same yacht where Julia and I had our accident. That yacht originally belonged to Eric's mother, as Julia could never afford to buy a yacht herself. After the accident, Eric's mother had the yacht retrieved. Julia had no idea there were surveillance cameras on board, so her claims that I caused the boat to capsize were impossible to believe. In the video, Julia could be seen confronting me, pressuring me to leave Eric. She told me that Eric no longer loved me, and that she was his true love. I replied that Eric should be the one to talk to me. If Eric told me himself that he didn't love me anymore, I would leave. My response clearly didn't satisfy Julia. Looking at me, she suddenly said, Zoe, what do you think? If you were dead, Eric would definitely love only me, right? As soon as she finished speaking, she grabbed the yacht's steering wheel and violently yanked it to one side. Given that we were already in the middle of a typhoon, the yacht immediately capsized, and both Julia and I were thrown into the sea. Julia could swim, so she was fine, but I couldn't swim at all. If not for the passing fishing boat that rescued us, I would have drowned in the ocean. After watching the video, Eric trembled uncontrollably. He had never imagined that his perfect first love could be such a person. He lifted his head, stunned, and looked at his mother. Eric, I know you've always blamed Zoe and thought I scolded you because she toweled on you, his mother said. Her words caused Eric's expression to change. You have no idea, Eric's mother began, her voice sharp. After you spent over $1 million on Julia in just 1 month of dating, I started having her investigated. She glared at Eric with pure disdain. Do you know who Julia really is? Eric was dumbfounded. In his eyes, Julia had always been gentle, kind, well-educated, and understanding, a rare, perfect woman. But after seeing the video of Julia's true behavior, Eric found himself at a loss for words. For the first time, he wasn't sure what to believe. Let me show you some information. Eric's mother, her face filled with disappointment, handed over a folder of documents to Eric. Chapter 7. Eric took the folder of documents, and his mother, standing beside him, began to speak. After just a month of you being with Julia, I had her investigated. Zoe had no idea about Julia's affairs. So how could she have tattled to me? Eric's mother said coldly. You probably don't know this, but while Julia was with you, she was also seeing other men. And it wasn't just one. She left you simply because I cut off your finances. She realized there was no more benefit to be had. Then, she moved on and found other men to support her. Eric's mother's face was icy as she continued. Later, she came to me and asked for money in exchange for leaving you. After she left, Julia had many men in her life over the years. Quite a few of them went bankrupt because of her. She's also a compulsive gambler, drowning in debt. Eric's face turned ashen. He gripped the documents tightly, disbelief written all over his face. Do you know why she came back this time? Eric's mother stared at him, her face stern. She's deep in debt. This time, she came back to get you to marry her, so you can pay off what she owes. Zoe's death is on you. Eric, from now on, I won't have anything to do with you. Starting today, you're on your own. With that, she stood up and walked away, leaving Eric pale and speechless. Meanwhile, my soul hovered above Eric. I watched as Eric broke down in tears, sobbing uncontrollably. He ran to my grave, kneeling before it and begging for forgiveness. His cries were gut-wrenching, but I had no intention of forgiving him. The moment he let go of me to rush to Julia's side, he had lost any chance of redemption. Even now, as he weeps at my grave, I remain unmoved. There is no forgiveness for him. Eric stayed kneeling at my grave until late into the night, before finally getting up to leave. The very next morning, Eric's mother publicly announced that she was severing all ties with him. She even visited an orphanage that same day and adopted a young girl. In front of everyone, she declared that Eric was no longer her son, and from that day forward, Eric ceased to exist in her life. The inheritance? Eric would never see a cent of it. Eric became the outcast of the hospital. After all, who would trust a man who showed no concern for his wife's life, and even refused to see her after her death? He was far from a good person. On top of that, the fact that he had refused to operate on me when he had the chance spread through the hospital like wildfire. It wasn't long before he was fired. Eric became the target of scorn, despised by everyone around him. Lost and broken, Eric left the hospital and returned home. Over the past few days, my soul had stayed by his side, wanting to witness the kind of fate that awaited him. He had started drinking heavily, spending every night in a drunken stupor. After his mother publicly cut ties with him, the first person to abandon him was Julia. Chapter 8. One morning, Eric received a phone call. He woke up early and immediately got in his car to drive somewhere. My soul floated beside him, filled with questions. It didn't take long before I understood where he was headed. He was going to see Julia. When he arrived, Julia was holding the arm of an older man, smiling sweetly and intimately wrapped around him. Both Eric and I saw this, and Eric's face turned dark with anger. For a brief moment, I almost felt sympathy for Eric. He had lost everything for Julia, but she clearly didn't care about him at all. As the older man left, Julia was about to head home, but Eric suddenly appeared and blocked her path. Julia's face immediately changed when she saw him. What are you doing here? I came to see you, Eric said, his eyes fixed on her. I know your mother doesn't like me. We're not right for each other, Julia replied softly, already aware that Eric wouldn't be inheriting his family's wealth. Naturally, she had no interest in staying with him anymore. Eric, however, roughly grabbed her arm and shoved her into his car. Tell me, why did you keep smearing Zoe's name, accusing her of threatening you, even after she's been dead for days? Eric's bloodshot eyes glared at Julia. Julia trembled in fear, her voice shaking. I'm sorry. I was too in love with you, so I lied. Crying, she pleaded. I was wrong. I'll go to Zoe's grave. I'll apologize to her. Sure. Eric let out a cold laugh and started driving. As the car sped along, Julia began to panic. Eric, where are we going? She realized quickly that they weren't headed toward the cemetery. Going to Zoe's grave would only disgust her. Since you're so eager to see her, I'll personally send you to meet her. Eric's voice was ice cold. What are you doing? Julia screamed, terror creeping into her voice. By now, the sea had come into view, and the car showed no signs of slowing down. At this speed, it was clear they were going to plunge straight into the water. Eric locked the doors and laughed maniacally. I'm going to find Zoe. I need to repent, to tell her how wrong I was. As for you, you'll repent too. We'll do it together. At this moment, Eric had completely lost his mind. Julia cried out in desperation, but Eric was beyond hearing her. Bang! With a loud crash, Eric's car broke through the guardrail, facing the edge of a cliff. Below the cliff lay the vast ocean. Amid Eric's maniacal laughter and Julia's relentless pleas, I watched as the car plunged into the sea. The water quickly flooded the vehicle. Julia frantically tried to open the door, but Eric had locked it. She was powerless to escape, and soon, both she and Eric drowned, suffocating together in the cold, dark ocean. I floated above, watching as they died. In his final moments, Eric muttered, "Zoe, I was wrong. We grew up together, and now I'm coming to see you, to apologize. I hope in the next life, we can still be husband and wife. If it's possible, in the next life, I will make up for all the pain I caused you. I will protect you, and never let you suffer again. Zoe, in the next life, wait for me." Hearing Eric's words, I shook my head gently. Eric, I've suffered too much in this life. I hope we never meet again in the future. The end.